All right, time to test the volume and the chat. Oh, we got some people already. All right, time to test the volume and the chat. Oh, we got some people already. Let's see if that helped. See if that helped. That doesn't sound like it. All right. Gives you enough. All right, and it looks like there are people keep kind of bouncing in and back out again. If you're here and can hear the sound of my voice, let's do our mic check and just throw something in the chat that you can hear me, and I will kick off. Hopefully, I don't tax my computer too much today. I'm trying to record this one and stream at the same time because of the last situation. I'm going to record my own as well. All right, I'm going to put the request out again. If you'll put something in the chat for me, just say, I'm here, so that I know you can hear me. Then I'm going to roll forward. All right. Thank you, Thelma. Always here to help. All right. So before I get rolling, just a note about this image. If you click into your assignment, I've populated that image in there this morning. This comes from, so I pulled this image, and it's probably not a bad idea to just kind of show you. Hopefully this is an old person's way of doing tech, but it is what it is. If I go to Reddit, thanks, Jay. If I go to Reddit, there's a subreddit called Reddit Gets Drawn. I'm gonna. So, oh, but it's flipped for you. I wonder if I can. Old person. Whatever. It's called Reddit Gets Drawn. It's not a bad place to go find reference images. It's people, I mean, some of them are good, some of them not so good. It's essentially users, Reddit users, just regular people posting their images on Reddit. And it's kind of like fair, free, and open use. They agree to terms that you can draw their image and post it on your social media sites and sell it or do whatever that you want with it. So it's kind of like a worry-free place to get decent reference. So you'll see, and it's not a bad idea if as long as you're drawing this, to go, if you're a Reddit user, obviously, to go onto Reddit and post it in the replies to this person's image and say, here's the drawing I did of you. And then they see it and respond back, and it's kind of like a fun thing, I guess. So if you're inclined, you can do that. But otherwise, you can hop on there and grab. It's about 99% selfies, to be honest, but that is what it is. I've got to get rid of this. Sorry, I've got my headphone in just to sort of, I was going to listen to some music or something while I go, but with it right in my ear, it's next to impossible to concentrate. So if I was by myself, maybe I would do that, but I'm not by myself, so I'm going to do without it. Anyway, Reddit Gets Drawn. I'll put it in the chat, actually. So if you're ever wanting face reference, you can go in there, and there's a bunch, and some of them are pretty decent quality pictures. So, and they're not just faces. Sometimes it's like full bodies. It's basically people and their friends that want artists to draw them and so on. Anyway, that's where I pulled this one from, and I've got a couple of others, so check it out. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do on this one is like what I always do before I get started, is just kind of take stock of what I'm looking at. This image to me seems, if I had to like pick two overarching colors in this image, it's going to be green and orange. It's kind of like a green-orange color scheme. So I'm going to keep that in mind if I want to stick to the color scheme. And I think I do. I want to keep it, reasonably, at least based on what I'm seeing here. I want it to feel natural, to feel kind of like the colors are proper for what I'm looking at. Just a note about that. So this today, feel free to ask any questions as well that you might have. But today we're going to do a color head. Next week we're going to do color heads, and they're like natural color, which is to say we're using the information that we see to inform our color choices with an attempt to balance them in a way that feels naturalistic or feels skin-like and feels appropriate. That's in contrast to what we're doing after next week, which is going to be back to the body, but we're going to be doing expressive color, expressive uses of color and line. not with an aim to match the body really at all. You might still lift from what you're seeing, but you're not trying to match anymore. You're kind of flying wild with it. You're going, left field. Anything's game. So when I say color matching, I don't mean like to match this color for color exactly. What I mean is to get the colors feeling like they're appropriate for a figure. I hope the difference there makes sense. And I'm sure it will make sense after next week when we start doing more expressive uses of color. When you're using colors that make no sense, more or less, with what you're seeing, you're just kind of you're choosing them for other reasons. And we'll talk about that, not next week, because we're still using the head. We'll talk about that when we get back to the body week after next. All right, so for this drawing, I'm going to start out, I'm working on black paper for this one. I kind of like the way black paper flex through the pastel drawing. So this is Canson Mi Tiente's black, and I'm working on the textured side of it. A lot of times I'll work on the back side because it's less aggressive texturally. I'm going to go ahead and work on the side they expect you to work on, I guess, because the tag is on the back side of this. And you'll see that coming through as I draw. And I'm going to start this one, since I said green and orange to begin with. A lot of times, normally, I'll start with magenta in the drawing, but for this one, I'm going to start with this green, and it's the middle green, but I feel like it's just, it's screaming light, so I think I might actually, I'm going to tone it down to this darker green. This is like that grass green stick. All right, and I'm going to sort of visualize out how much of the page this is going to take so that I don't end up doing a small head like this on such a big page. I'm going to go like bottom of the beard, yay. Top of the forehead, yay. We'll just swipe that hair up out. So that's going to be like bottom of the beard, top of the forehead, and I'm just going to take a quick middle measurement so I can keep my gesture in check. Halfway mark is the middle of the nose, so I need a longer measuring implement. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, so that's going to give me bottom of the nose, so nose goes up from here. And I'm in this stage of the drawing, I'm not going to worry too much about making a mess. It's about halfway again to get to where the eyebrows are. Now, one thing I notice is there's a tilt to the eyes. I want to make sure I get that, so this point is lower than that point. Center line of the face is just a little bit, it's kind of on the tilt too, so like the eyes are tilted this way and the head is tilted slightly that way, so I'm going to avoid making it perfectly straight up and down. I want there to be some tilt to it. All right, this side of the head, beard comes down, up. I notice the back of his hair comes right out of the beard a little bit, and then he's got, if I come down, so face roughly there. I'm going to get I'm going to exaggerate the back slant of his neck just a little bit, just to give it some interest, to further keep it from being straight up and down. I've got this tilt coming this way, down the axis of the head. Hope it makes sense. It's tilted like this. So when I get to the neck, I'm going to reverse that and go the other way to kind of get that bend of the neck in. Right, and I can adjust that later, but that's going to give me, this point is a little lower than that point. That's going to give me a more interesting look through here. Instead of going straight down the barrel, it's like head tilt this way, neck tilt that way, body potentially tilting back the way the head is. All right, I'm not going to be super specific down there, of course. All right, one thing that we tend to ignore when we're doing a head, so like here's the, I'm going to give him just a little more cheekbone here. One thing that we tend to ignore, or that's easy to miss, I guess I should say, or that you don't think to look for when doing a head, on this side, so this is my shadow side, the temptation here is to not listen to what my eyes are telling me and instead listen to what my brain wants to do, which is to say, where is the other edge? Where's the back edge of the head? And it's like, oh, somewhere back here, I got to get that other edge, just like I got this edge. And so you try to like make the oval of the whole head happen. And for me, that's kind of a mistake. If you're in gestural, at least paying too close attention to it is kind of a mistake, because if I look at the image, I don't really see it, right? I see this edge really clearly, and so it makes sense to like, focus some attention there. But I don't really see this where the hair kind of meets the side of the head. I don't see that very clearly at all. What I see instead is this like border, I call it the Iron Man mask or whatever. If I go through the eyes, there's like this nose gap to about there. There's like this zigzag where the light, that's the border between light and shadow. I want to get that in more than getting that back edge. That back edge is going to be lost in the darkness anyway, and I'm going to make it lost in the darkness in my drawing, so why try to define it really clearly? I don't need to, but I do need this shadow edge, so I'm going to define that. All right, and I'm also going to make a triangle, so from the tip of the nose to the sort of corners of the eyes, I'm just going to make a triangle out of that just to see, like, is my drawing sort of in check with what I see up there? It's almost, in fact, if I go from the just underneath his nose to that corner of his left eye, that distance is just about the same as the corner to the other eye, which is just slightly shorter than the distance between the two corners of the eyes. So let me show you where I was there. So I'm going to call that point corner of eye. I'm going to call this point underneath of nose. And I'm already off just a little bit. Move that over. This is kind of the line that I see there. This is imaginary. This isn't an actual line. This is just like corner of the eye to the nose. I can take that same distance, swing it this way, get the corner of the other eye at roughly the angle I saw it, which was, kind of like that. Make sure this is higher so I keep my slant. I don't want it to go perfectly straight to the side. I want it to be off horizontal just a little bit. And then the distance between them should be slightly longer. Yeah. So that's what I've got. So I feel relatively comfortable putting an eye here. I like to draw the whole eye socket first. All right, we'll get to that other part of that later. Distance between the eyes. How are we doing? We got one eye distance there, and it's a little less than. That points in too far, I believe. When I took this eye width and went over, it went partially into this eye here. And I'm going to try and stay sensitive to what's happening in the image. Like if I see something out of whack, like I'm going to stop here in a second, and if I see something's out of whack, like the eyes too close together or something like that, I'm going to take a second to deal with it. That feels pretty good. Might need a little bit more adjustment later, but I think I'm gonna roll with that. I'm gonna kind of do a planar head here, and this is kind of like that gesture. I'm not gonna swipe in a bunch of value because I've got black paper, so I'm gonna kind of map out my stuff first, and then I'll get to dealing with the values. But I do want to get a sort of planar situation going in the head. Notice that his lips are just about as wide as the overall nose as well. A little loop down here where his hair, and this is kind of a hallmark of facial hair for guys, is from straight under the lip here, you get hair. There's like this loop on either side. And he has a few hairs in the dark covering it up. And some guys, this fills in. But it's very common in beard hair. And if this was in the light, I think we'd see his skin here as well. To have this kind of loop of thin hair right underneath the corner of the mouth as the mustache comes over and joins the rest of the facial hair. So kind of like it swoops from the center of the lip down and over the top of the lip, and you get this little gappy area there, which is kind of nice. It's a nice thing to get. Truth be told, I'll manufacture that if I don't necessarily see it. I'm going to check beard height again, just real quick. So I'm going to do a quick measurement here of the height of the beard. It goes to right between the eyes. So if I go from beard to bottom of the lip, I should be right between the eyes. So that's good. This is again that shadow edge, so it's like boom, boom, boom. Like this zigzag is a really nice thing to see and get in your drawing. Regardless of what this back edge is doing, I'm going to kind of be silhouetting this back edge anyway. Now I'm just sort of roughly, more or less, following what the hairline's up to. All right, the head looks pretty big, but I'm going to just do a quick measurement just to see. So if I had gray paper, would I spend the time swiping in values? Potentially, yes. What I would probably do in the gray paper is swipe in shadows. So that tends to be my working procedure. Is I'll use the magenta stick, and you saw in one of the other images that magenta stick. It's like a straight line block in start, and then swiping values after that, or like mixed in with that. So here's a shadow swipe. I'm not really swiping the shadows here because the paper's just is the darkest that things are going to go. Maybe my black will darken the paper a little bit. I probably won't use it, but and the light, I don't want to start swiping in the light personally right now. I know it's going to be really opaque. I know I'm going to be working into it with layering and stuff. So for better or worse, I'm kind of laying off the light. I could, maybe I'll do that in just a second. Maybe I'll swipe some of the light in just so you can see what I'm talking about. So beard to forehead. So side to side with beard to forehead. I'm gonna have to step away from my drawing here to get my measurement because things are so big. So side to side, beard to forehead. Okay, I'm happy with that. One more measurement. I'm just going to go between the eyebrows to the top of the forehead and just compare that to, I'm just going to drop it down one and see what I get. So lips, so the top of that bottom lip to the middle of the eyes should get me to the hairline. This forehead's a little tall. Or potentially lips are a little bit high. I'm going to run a measurement between the nose and the lips real quick and these are real general measurements. It's not super specific. It's like the width of one eye. So I feel reasonable about the face. That feels a little bit high to me, so I'm just going to do as I measured and just pop this down a little bit. And eye to that. This happens just a little bit further. That's his forehead. And then, all right, that's going to get lost in shadow. All right, so were I to swipe light on this one, and I have to ask myself, what do I want to swipe with? Do I want to keep swiping with this green and then have to balance that later? Or do I want to swipe with something that's a little closer to what I'm seeing? Which, if I have to compare, it's like I don't want to start swiping with my orange straight out the gate because that's pretty, well, I might start swiping with this dark neutral orange just to give myself, especially along this shadow edge, like you'll notice on the face over here, it's quite light in value. And then as it shifts over here, the value lessens because it's halftone, it's heading into the shadow, and the color intensity picks up just a little bit, a little more chroma over here, like down in the lip, across the bridge of the nose, that part of the cheek, up in the forehead. I'm getting a little more of these orange hits. So I'm going to go ahead and start swiping that in. And this, right now, I can tell you right off the bat, this neutral orange is not very neutral. It's got a lot of oomph to it. So I think I might pick I just call it my dead brown or my dead orange. I put a little piece of yoga mat down below, so now if I drop my sticks, it's not the end of the world. You notice this dead brown doesn't, well, I don't know how it shows on the screen. On my drawing paper, it does not feel nearly as dead as I'm used to it feeling. You know what? I feel like that's gonna, I feel like I probably could swipe with the green over here, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I'm just giving a real light covering to anything that looks like it's going to need it. And I'm more thinking about light and shadow here than I am about color. I'll get the color eventually. I'm going to go ahead and put some of this in shadows as well. Ooh, we need to talk about facial hair too, and just hair in general. Like, how do you avoid it looking like 1,000 strings, you know, like, as can happen. This green is going to kind of help unify. It's like the magenta. I'm thinking about it, at least in terms of the magenta. It's going to help unify the rest of the image. All right, so anyway, Jay, to answer your question, I would almost certainly be swiping with some shadow. I tend to like swiping the shadows in when I'm using gray paper. As we know from doing the white paper assignment from beginning, if you did that one, it's really counterintuitive to work in lights only. It's good to be able to see them. It's just not real. It doesn't really make sense to your brain quite so well. I'm going to come in and do some cleanup here. So because I'm on black paper, I'm going to lift. I can lift back to my shadows. So I'm going to do a little bit of that. And this is part of like maybe the being flexible in the way that you work aspect of how I approach these, at least. I like to have an arsenal of approaches sort of at the ready, and then assess the drawing for which of those approaches is going to be the most appropriate for what I need to do. And for this one, it's like I'm going to bring some detail in and maybe get rid of some of this green as I get more clarity in these features. I'm relatively pleased with how they're sitting. My idea is to let the black paper be the deep shadows, and that'll save me some time sort of working those out more specifically later. And so I need to pop some of this up. The more pastel I put on the page, the less this is going to work. So I have to be sensitive to that as well. Shave that forehead down just a tad. Get that cheekbone in. I also have to remember that this is my dark green, so it's looking really light because of the black paper, which is nice because it's going to give me a lot of room later. It's going to save me from going too light too soon. But it's also going to kind of lie to me about what my values are doing. Because it'll look really, really light to me, but it won't be. This is also where, if you're anything like me, just the texture of this paper is really quite aggressive. I think I might model some of these shadows in with the darker colors that I've got too. Maybe like a dark blue or something. Feels pretty good. Yeah, I kind of destroyed this little area, so I'm going to bring it back. It's like the side of that eye as it wraps. It's turning into shadow sooner than the side of the face, and so we get that little shadow edge there. It's nice. And it creeps up the side too. Yeah, I think I'm going to model those in with the dark stick, just with how this is behaving. All right, I'm going to leave that. We'll deal with that later. I want to bring something, I want to anchor something. Everything's still quite sketchy right now, so let's say, I'm going to see what my deep blue does as far as putting some darks. Yeah, see, even that is light. So I think with how dark this image is, I'm going to be, but I do like how that blue is acting next to that brown, so I'm going to keep it around. I may have to, if I'm not going to use my eraser extensively, I may have to bring my black stick into play. So this is that dead brown. I'm letting it mix in with the green. So again, that's orange and green. That's in keeping with sort of what I assessed this as being from the start. So they're not really going to neutralize each other per se, but they are going to kind of take some of the bite out of each other. And let's see, I've got this as nearly vertical, kind of, it's leaning back a tad in my drawing. I think it's leaning back a little bit more in the image. Corner of the eye straight down, yeah. Yeah, I think this goes, oops. That's a little, And this is the problem with erasing pretty much at all with the pastels or anything more than this first layer. If I were to smear and then erase, it lifts a lot better. I don't really want to do that with this one because I don't want my pastels to be, I want the black paper to kind of, it doesn't bug me for it to exist through, to like pop through the image. So I'm going to go ahead and be okay with it. Right, I'm going to give a little bit of this beard. And this is just like, layer number 1. But it's got some of the orange that's up in the head. And maybe it's a little more yellow. Maybe I'll add some yellow to that a little bit later. But it's not going to bug me right now to have these kind of, the skin, everything's kind of inhabiting the same color space right now. I'm not going to let that bug me because that's going to keep things unified longer. Right, and I'm keeping the hair just kind of like these block. Like I'm not even messing with the light stuff that's happening over here. I'm just keeping it as block ends for now. All right. And I'm going to swipe this stuff in. Yeah. All right, now this, I'm going to play up the light shapes a little bit more, and I'm going to see, this is the light green stick. I'm going to see if it's in the ballpark. It's a little warm. It's acting like yellow. Is this a yellow stick? Nope, it's my light green. It's just got so much yellow in it that it looks like yellow next to all this green, like inside of the orange and green that's there. To me, that's looking like yellow. So I'm going to pick a gray. So I'm dipping into my full color plus a bit, like my 12 color plus a bit pack. I'm going to see what the gray, man, that is so light. Do I have a darker gray? I do have a slightly darker gray. And this is going to start taking on a flesh tone really quickly because it's this light gray, but it's going to mix with the orange. If I want to neutralize that even further, I could grab like I believe this is like the middle blue. It's this blue from the pack. If I grab that, then everything's going to go cool really quickly. I don't know if well, let me see what this gray does a little bit more. Yeah, I kind of like the gray. I'm gonna stick with the gray for now. Keeps things in this warm area. I'm going to resist the temptation to go real detailed. Just getting the sort of basic light situation. I'm not going to do too much of it over here because the light over here is way less. Maybe here and just a little bit there. I'm just going to lay down some initial blue here. Those irises. It's overboard right now, but I can always neutralize later. And I'm making these irises are not perfect circles. The model's looking to the side. They're going to be squished just a little bit. They're not going to be perfectly circular. Only if they're looking directly at me do they go more circular like that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and use my black here. Because I've got the black of the paper doing so much, I'm going to reestablish some of my dark stuff with the black pencil because I started using an eraser to lift out some of the black. Didn't really like how it was going so much. So I'm going to reestablish some things, some clarity with the black stick. Sparingly though, and I am going to come back and dress that up later, but I want to get some of this contouring in. It's important to note here that I'm not using this to fill in shadows or anything. I'm just using it to reestablish some contours. And I'm not going to use it everywhere either. I'm going to use it in those areas of highest contrast. There to there. It's going to be off to the side. One thing I want to keep track of is, am I keeping these eyes tilted, or am I starting to make them so am I starting to flatten them out? Felt a little bit to me like I was starting to flatten them out. I'm going to take stock for a second. We have the eyes just a slight bit big, but I'm going to go ahead and let that stay. And I'm going to get a little bit bolder. I'm going to set about kind of knocking this texture, the black texture, away in some areas, especially out in the light, and then model on top of that with cleaner and cleaner stuff. So again, this is that dead brown, not so dead in this context, strangely. I'm looking past light and shadow effects. So like the highlight on the nose. I'm going to deviate from that for now. This is a good opportunity for this. This is that dark red, and it's not in the 12 color pack, but it's like a, auxiliary color, but it's going to add some red. It's going to warm things up for me here and there. I don't think I'm going to put it everywhere, but I am going to warm some stuff up with it. He's got a little jut in on his nose. I am going to bring my eraser into this one. Such a dirty eraser, though. He's got like an interesting little cut in where the cartilage of his nose kind of dips in. It's like a few different pieces of cartilage there. Other places for this red. Maybe a touch down here. I like to add it to the nose area. I'm going to use it to help protect the black from being too powerful. Inside corner of the eye is a good place for it. I might even add just a few flecks over here. Not going crazy with it, just adding a little bit here and there. Keep that on deck just in case. I'm going to come back with this green. Knock some of the pink out of this that I've done before. And I'm going to come back with that gray again and sort of work it into what I just did. This is all kind of an attempt to fill in the texture of the page. I noticed it lightens up quite a bit down here. I'll lighten it up, and I'm going to use this opportunity to add some of this. That's too green. Add some of this blue. I'm just going to keep it away from the cheeks, which is cheeks and nose generally tend to be a warmer area. So in here I'm getting blue to help kind of balance against this orange that I've got going on this side, and to rhyme with what the light is doing a little bit more. My goodness, what is this going to do? Got some violet there, but I am not interested in using that just yet, if at all. This little dark mark I just made, I notice that it's, if I look at it from a hard soft edge perspective, it's kind of soft on this edge, and it's harder on this edge. I'm going to make sure and do the same. And that was a little bit hard of an edge, but I kind of like what it's doing. It's describing that plane shift right there. So I'm going to ease it out just at the bottom, but it's going to describe that edge of the nose for me. So now I'm pouring just a little bit more oomph into the light shapes. So this is still that gray. I swear, y'all, when I swipe it on my hand, it's gray. When I swipe it on the drawing, it goes skin toned, and it's because of this dead brown, this orange that's already down. It's mixing with this and giving me a reasonable skin tone. So I'm gonna roll with it, so as not to look a gift horse in the mouth, so to speak. And I've got some eyebrow situation here, so I'm going to avoid 1,000 marks for the eyebrows, and I'm just gonna side swipe this stick, and it's black. I'm just gonna let it be black for now, and I'll adjust it later if I need to. Again, I'm not shading with it, I'm just getting this dark detail in. And I'll almost certainly come back with this brown and touch it up. In fact, I'm definitely going to do that just so it doesn't try to take over. as black wants to do always. All right, and I'm going to do some more adjusting of this later as well. I kind of like what this green is doing here, so I'm going to like, in that pocket of the, it's almost like shadow, it's like the underturn of the eye, but it's still kind of catching some incidental light. I'm going to use that as an opportunity to maybe like throw some blue-green in, just to kind of keep things interesting. All right, let's see. I'll tell you one thing I'm going to avoid like the plague. Here's that top shelf of the eyelid. What am I going to avoid like the plague? I'm going to avoid using white in the eye area at all of this drawing. I do not want white. I do not want, nor do I need white in that eye. Instead, I can shape it. I'm going to start with this blue. That's already going to give me something. I'm going to bring some of this green into it. I'm going to bring some of this dead brown into it. I'm happy with that. So at least as a start. So that's my advice to you on whites of the eyes. Don't use white. There's almost always a better option. It's not as red here in the reference image, but I want some turn to that eyelid, and it's a good opportunity to throw some red down for interest's sake. All right, I'm going to shape this iris out just a little bit better. When doing small detail work like this, the pastels aren't the easiest. The NuPastel stick. You can sharpen to a point. What I would say is if you have the means and the wherewithal, pastel pencils are usually a good option. There's like you can sharpen them up quite nicely and get good stuff to happen. You can get in there into those tight spots. All right, I'm going to hold off on that reflection for now as I finish dressing out this eye. Or maybe not finish, but continue. And it's black and red right here. That's what I'm using. I'm using the black to get things dark again, and I'm using the red to keep things from going too black. There's an interesting little bit of ado. They're certainly not structural. Like, I find it's really easy to overdo it with lashes. So the most I'll do is like the top lash will just be like a wedge shape. The bottom lashes will kind of be non-existent. This is where I have to fight my natural tendency to rest my pinky on the page. You can see me smudging the world away over here. Luckily, it's going to be pretty messy kind of painterly thing that I'm doing, so not too big of a deal. Got to be careful not to hold the pastels in my hand and then rest on my hand, or I'll crush them all to bits. Get just a little bit more red up in here. This is that mint. It's like not mint. It's a sky blue kind of color. And I'm just kind of swiping it into the orange to sort of provide something for the orange to balance against. That's my black stick. It's nice because having this over here gives me context about what I'm going to do with the rest of it. Right? It gives me the bravery to use some of this stuff. It felt like really harsh before. Now it doesn't feel near so harsh because I have this to refer to. So that's nice and helpful. Yeah, oh my goodness, 15 minutes? There's no way. There's no way I'm going to finish this in 15 minutes. Oh, I'm throwing a little bit of light shapes in. Don't judge me. Normally I'd reserve those for later because I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to have to change some stuff. And I very well may, but right, I'm going to ignore the hair texture here and just look for light and dark areas. So light through there. There's this dark shape right here. Again, ignoring the hair texture. So I'm not drawing this like 1,000 hairs. I'm just kind of like building building the mass. And I'm going to add just a little bit of yellow to this now that I add just a little variation through here. I noticed it's more yellow through there, more yellow through the middle. It kind of takes an orange turn here and right through here. And then might as well throw some in. If I'm doing it in one spot, might as well do it in some others. A little bit there, and I'm going to leave off. Orange. Let's see what my actual orange does, shall we? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. It's my neutral orange, but as I saw before, mainly to keep myself from just having one color shots of yellow over here as well. There we go. Ooh, that's a lot of that. So I'm going to come back with my dead brown and take some of the spice out of that orange I just put down. Now, if I had all the time in the world, I might come in and texture out each little bit of hair and everything, or at least the light shapes, and like model the hair out more effectively than it is here. But in the time frame I've got, 15 minutes, I have to decide where do I want people to look. And I mean, you don't have a choice. You want them to look here. And so the decisions that I make from here are going to reflect that. So just a little bit of supporting roll here, because the head needs to be sitting on something. Get the neck in there. See there. I kind of like this blue and this green. Maybe with some more blue in it. Wrong blue. No, that's the right blue. It's kind of a stand-in for, it's going to be my white in the shadow. And so then this is going to be in fact, I'm going to go with something a little less chroma than that. Just to give me something. Right, and if I want this beard looking more hair-like, and then under here it looks dark against the skin, so somewhere in between there's going to be that shift, and I'm just going to play with that edge, just by adding a little bit of texture like that. And a little bit like that. Right? I'm not going to do 1,000 hairs starting from here all the way down. I'm like shading with a texture is what I would call it. So playing with the silhouette edge of the hair. The occasional swipe there. It's almost like I'm shading. I'm doing like a textured shading job. The question I need to ask myself is, how much do I need, right? That's probably good right there for now. Again, just little hits. Some of this orange back. Yeah, Thelma. The planes on the nose, it's like I'm thinking face here in less light, then it turns this way away from the light source so it's dark, back towards us so it lightens up a little bit again, and then kind of towards, it's like somewhere on the edge here is where it's facing the light the closest. So I am going to come back through and add a highlight along that edge, not right on the edge because I want it to look like it's turning. So from this edge, I'm going to come back a little bit and give a highlight. And then down to the face. Yeah, so it's that planar, that whole do situation. If you can keep your eyes or keep your head in that game, it's really, really helpful. I'm going to add a few little, and I'm kind of going farther on this hair than I would right now, just because I wanted to get a variety of things done. You know, not much, I would say. Silhouette in just a little more clearly. Give us a moment of clarity there. Right, it's nice to have those. Don't have to be everywhere. But that gives me a nice silhouette edge. Like that's going to draw my eye because it's so clean right there. Maybe a little bit here too. I see this in the image. And yeah, I'm just going to bring that whole edge down. It gets a little more lost right through here. So I don't want it to carry it too far like that because there is some break there. So I'm going to take this dead brown and just kind of break that edge a tad. All right, I'm going to bring some highlight back to the nose too. There's definitely some there, and I think I might even punch that one up in a minute. I like adding, noses are something that stick out so strongly that I like adding, I don't think I'm going to put any highlight between. I like adding punchy highlights to noses. Makes them jump. Makes them stick out at us more. All right, and if I want to make an even bolder highlight choice on that nose, I if I grab something that's like, so what I've got down now is kind of a brown, like orange, blue, whatever. Or it's not orange, blue, whatever. It's more of an orange. If I want it to pop, if I put down a really light light that's opposite that, so a really light blue or a really light, maybe like white and blue, that highlight will seem to stand out all the stronger. Right, so that's going to start taking on a shine, and I can even go, this is a soft pastel of just white. I can put that right in the center, and that thing will, like right now, that thing is screaming. And it's probably more so than I want it to, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it. All right, now I'm going to put in some of this reflection on the eye. And one other thing I wanted to do, so I'm going to look at this, like overall I've got green, man, I've got a lot of oranges and greens and stuff going on in the figure itself. What can I do in the background? I want the background to be relatively chilled out. I don't want it to have a lot of oomph. I wonder, I'm not going to use violet because I haven't used it anywhere yet. And if I use it in the background and not at all in the figure, it's going to look weird. So I'm going to pick something that I've kind of used already, and I'm going to put it in the background. And I think I'm going to use a combination of this dark blue, which is kind of like what I did in the eye, and this dead brown, which is everywhere. And I'm going to kind of mix them together and use them as background. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the top of it be. This is going to give me the other side of the head. It's going to make it more obvious than just that green line. Whoops. I can't keep it. This thing is now a triangle, this dark blue, and so it's hard to keep hold of. And I kind of like the intensity that that's given me. I'm going to assess this when I'm done and see, do I like it as is, or does it need some dead brown? You know what? Nah, I don't mind that intensity. I'm going to leave that. I can always come back with some brown and blue and sort of neutralize that if I want to, but I don't know, for some reason I like the way it's making the whole thing seem richer, right? Like the color has gotten richer. So I'm going to go ahead and let that. What I might do, there's some glow, like in the reference image, there's some glow around the top of the head. There is a thing there's like a photographer's trick of doing the old value switch, which is where your background, so in my image, my light side is here and it goes dark this way, light to dark. If my background goes the opposite way, so light to dark this way, so they kind of do that, it maximizes the punch. So the value contrast, it kind of like chiaroscuros the whole thing. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of that. Just lighten this side, and this is lighter blue, so it's going to keep things kind of rich and play ball a little bit with the blue that's already down. It's not going to neutralize it as much. Just kind of take it, bring that richness back. And if I want, I can do the opposite on the other side. So I've got my black here. This is going to kill the blue a little bit. And I kind of question its necessity because of how dark the black paper is already. So I'm like, I don't think I gain anything really from mixing that black in. I think I'm just going to let that stand. I am going to bring some of this beard texture in, so I'm going to play this edge just a little bit, bring some of that beard back. One thing I'm going to do right now, I probably won't do, I mean, it's 2 minutes later than it's supposed to be. But I'm going to hunt down any places that look like they're too black. Like, oh, that's not the stick I wanted. That's all right, though. Anywhere that looks like I kind of overdid the black on the figure. So like maybe up in here. Maybe over here. I'm just going to hit that black with some red, maybe just a little fleck of blue. It's going to take, I mean, it's kind of arbitrary, to be honest, but it's going to take the blue is going to rhyme with the background, which is always nice. It's going to breathe some life back into things. Like even on this silhouette edge, I'm just going to flex some red into that. And maybe just a hit or two of blue. It doesn't change the function really that much. Like it still reads as black, but it doesn't have quite that deadening effect, right? It kind of keeps things it keeps them alive. And I would encourage you to work on different surfaces. One of the things that it does is it keeps you like on your toes, I guess. Or at least it's something it does for me. It keeps me sensitive to the drawing. Like I have to assess, like, what should I do? What's the what does the drawing need, and so on, instead of just assuming that it's going to always behave the way that I always think it's going to behave, if that makes sense. Potentially saves you potentially from, I don't know, getting in a rut. There's a weird balance in my mind. There's like a weird fight between getting your process down so you're comfortable and you've got a plan and you feel like you can do it and that kind of stuff, and getting stuck sort of doing what you always do. I feel like it's important not to let yourself get stuck. And that may just be a personal preference of mine. I'm not sure what because there are hyper specialists that really excel astoundingly at the process that they have honed over a lot of practice. So I don't want to make it sound like that's not valuable, because I think it is, but I don't know. To me, there's just a danger of being like, here's how you always draw. And I think it's because for me, drawing's not about, it's not as much, I guess I should say, it's not as much about making it look right or making it look like or pulling off the trick, so to speak. It's not as much about that to me as it is about trying to understand what it is that you're doing your drawing of, like come to grips with what that thing is and think about it in different ways maybe than you might be inclined to. And so I think for that reason I kind of tend towards throwing roadblocks at myself, to some extent or another, to ward off the tendency to get stuck. Yeah, it's like that, the muscle confusion they call it or whatever. Like you see more gains at the gym if you do different exercises. Don't let your body get used to any one exercise. That eraser was not the right choice. Yeah, if you do the same thing, you get really good at it, but there's also a certain like efficiency that deserves. But I don't know, that's just something I've always felt like, and I say that with the full understanding that my position allows me to do that. Like if you're a production artist at some studio, you are not going to go, well, I just felt like going this way with it because I wanted to challenge myself, and I know it's not really, that's going to land you in trouble instantly. But as a personal, as a personal pursuit or whatever, it's worth it to challenge yourself. And you'll find a lot of those production artists do, like they have a side, they exhibit artwork on the side, or they do something on the side that keeps them flexing those muscles, flexing their own creativity, so as not to just get stuck again. The nice thing about this pursuit we've chosen is it will occupy us the rest of our days. Oh, I'm not doing a live Zoom session today, by the way, so that's why I'm carrying on longer. Technically, we're in spring break. I'm not going to do a live stream tomorrow. So I got family-related things I need to take care of. But we'll be back at it with another head on Wednesday of next week. So you don't technically have heads due this week, though you could turn them in anytime, of course. Let's see, I feel like this cheek needs a highlight. Yeah, I like that. Here I'm taking liberties with what I see. So the reference image, and it's on my I've got a weird computer monitor over there, so it's not showing me this sort of little highlight bit here. But I know there's a cheekbone there. And I want to show off the form a little bit. And same up here. So I'm going to kind of add lights where I feel like they need to go. This is that soft pastel. It is so soft that it just sits right on top of that new pastel. This is going to help it rhyme with what I've done in the nose. And heck, if we were feeling it, we could really pop something in the eyes. However, I'm not feeling that so much. I kind of like the more subtle reflection in the eye, so I'm just going to see if that'll lift. Yeah, I'm just going to smear it away. Bring some of that pupil back. Yeah, that's all right. I'm going to ease the halftone on this nose just a little bit with some red. I know it's not very red in the picture, but the nose has a lot of blood in it. You can get away with it. All right, I'm going to call it at 11:44. Time of death, 11:44. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself as much as I did. And as always, thanks for watching. No, just kidding. All right, and I will see you folks or at least hear from you in the chat on Wednesday. It's a long time, but I don't know. It's how the schedule works. I like being able to give it the time that we give it here, like an hour and a half at a time. I feel like that is something we don't get in class as much, so I'm grateful for that. But unfortunately, means we meet much less frequently. So anyway, all right. Good luck with yours. I'll have other faces up for next week. I'll try and put them in Canvas before the day of, but yeah, it is what it is. You also all have a good spring break. See you later.